I'm so excited as a Gopher season ticket holder to introduce the interim athletic director for the greatest university on the state of the planet, Minnesota Gopher interim athletic director, Beth Goetz.
It's just such an honor to be here with you this morning, and I'm so grateful to Paul for the invitation and the opportunity to share my story. He's already making me look a little bit bad because I thought I was sporting our colors pretty well, but he's clearly outdone me, just clearly outdone me. It still feels like when you get an invitation to speak, particularly about something as inspiring as what this breakfast is about. Who am I to tell my story? I don't have it figured out. I'm still learning, and then your second thought is maybe that's exactly why the story is important. We are all learning through that process, and I think that's certainly part of it. So you remind yourself each day that you're farther along than you were the day before, and that you have to enjoy what you learn along the way. So I'm really excited to be with you, and as we talk through sort of what got me to where I am today and how I go about making some of these decisions, I think you'll see a lot of the F's will pop through my story. When I think about people I admire, I always think about those that are brave, those that are fearless, those that seem to have just been born seemingly completely comfortable in their own skin. They can, as the saying goes, they dance like no one is watching, love like they've never been hurt before, sing like nobody is listening, and even if somebody is, they don't really care. But that's not me. Not me at all. As a kid, I was always the one that didn't want to draw attention to myself. I was a pleaser. I wanted to do things the right way, and not just because it was the right way, but because it was a way not to have the focus on me. My mom tells this story that I did a flute solo at some point in time, and they had no idea till they actually showed up at the concert that was going to be the role that I played. But at some point in time, I also learned about myself that I was ambitious, that I was competitive. And I was trying to figure out how to balance those two things, not wanting to be the center of attention, but wanting to achieve success. And what that meant for me was that I was going to have to learn to take a risk. I was going to have to learn to show bravery even though I didn't feel it. And that has been a journey that continues to this day. But you have to go outside of yourself if you really want to be able to move forward. I grew up in a family of 4 girls, a great Catholic family in St. Louis, Missouri. Started on the Mississippi River, and my journey is taking me here in the Twin Cities back to that same river. It's been a homecoming of sorts. I've been here for about 3 years. And kind of the way where something is vaguely familiar, even though you haven't spent much time there before. My mother's family settled in the late 1800s in Henderson, Minnesota. Our family name is still in the stained glass windows of the church. The name is on the building of the drugstore that the family owned. And there's a simple comfort in knowing that this is where my family's story began and maybe where mine's going to continue. As I grew up in just a really blessed home with tremendous support, there were a lot of things that probably should have told me where my path was going to lead. I heard this morning from someone who said they knew what they were going to do from the age of 10, I believe it was. And I really had no idea. But my parents were sports fans. My mom played basketball decades before her time. As she tells me now, she wasn't allowed to cross the half-court line back in the day. But still, she played at the college level. We didn't have a lot of luxuries in life, but for a while, my parents held on to season tickets to the football Cardinals. Yes, there was a football team, another football team that left the city many years ago. But I would spend Sundays with my dad as he quizzed me about the NFL mascots. But St. Louis is really a baseball town. I have very few childhood memories that don't have the sound of Jack Buck's voice calling a game in the background. We grew up in a way that we knew the starting lineups for almost every Cardinal team from the time I was 8 on. I say that, but my friends here at the Minnesota Twins have quickly reminded me to forget about that year where the Twins beat us in the World Series. But sports has always been a really important piece of everything that we did as kids. It was always right there as we went through life. It was a way to find that space where I could be brave, where it felt okay to be in the mix and start to have some of that attention and take some of the chances that I could. My parents had a love for the outdoors as well. We would hike and camp and visit any national park that our wood-paneled station wagon with the door tied shut could actually get us to. Oftentimes, it was tied to a tournament that myself or one of my sisters had, but we would stay in a tent and camp while the rest of the team was at a hotel. At the time, I was always a little bit embarrassed about that. It was partly financial for us to do that, but what a great appreciation I had in the opportunity as an adult to really learn to grow and love that piece of my upbringing. My father is the most compassionate man I've ever met. He lives that each and every day, and in a house full of 4 girls, you can see where that was really probably important. Each one of us has a story of him pulling over on the side of the road, picking up someone who seemed to need a ride, which seems unusual by today's standards, so you'd be picking up hitchhikers with kids in the car. But he was always willing to help. We'd pull over when we were late for some function because he saw an elderly woman shoveling the driveway, and it was the right thing to do to stop. Our house was always filled with people who had no other place to go, whether that be on holidays for a meal or friends whose families were having challenges and they were able to stay with us for weeks at a time. If I can learn and emulate just a portion of that, I know the world will be a better place. My mom was the strong one. Her work ethic has been incredible, but she is patient and steadfast and always has the right approach. I can remember driving back to a store where she received a change that was in excess of the amount, and I think lots of people would do that they were entitled to. But this was by 6 cents. 6 cents. She wouldn't accept 6 pennies, even when no one was really looking. And she taught you right from wrong. That work ethic, though, led me to get my first job at 14, not because I needed to, but I wanted to be able to contribute, to be able to demonstrate that I could help our family, that I could make choices on my own as well. And I worked straight through high school and through college as well because it was important to me to show that value to my parents as well. I'm beyond grateful for the opportunities I received, but also a little bit guilty. Yes, Catholic guilt is a real thing. When you do something wrong, but also when you have great opportunity. I was fortunate to have a family that was encouraging, that was loving, that provided a great education. And there's not on my worst day an opportunity for me to be disappointed in what I've been able to do and what I've been surrounded with. I played 3 sports in high school, and before that, played anything I could get my hands on. It turns out I wasn't a really great athlete, but I figured out how to make myself valuable to the teams that I was on. In some cases, that helped us win, and in others, it just helped the team get to where they need to go. I played softball, which was probably my parents' favorite sport to watch me play. And my success can be summed up by my senior year where they started calling me by my initials, BG. My dad thought that was really cool because Bob Gibson was a pitcher for the St. Louis Cardinals. But what it really meant was ball girl. So when a foul ball went astray, coach would say, BG. I said, I'm on it. And I'd take off running. But I did find my niche in soccer. I focused on that in my senior year and was able to earn a scholarship to a small private school in the mountains of North Carolina called Brevard. And it was there that I really started to embrace what being a leader meant. And I had opportunities there where I failed more than I was successful. But it was a step. Partially, that happened in a dorm where I became a resident assistant and learned what it was like to have to be a mentor for your peers. And while a great opportunity, that also creates some challenges about trying to get others to follow when you're leading. We were a pretty good team. It was a two-year school. We were ranked second in the nation. And as we went into playoffs for a game we were expected to win, I was in my room writing notes to my teammates, really excited about the game, trying to find ways to inspire them. When I finished my notes and ran down the hall to give them out, I walk into a room of 5 of my teammates who are drinking and having a good time. Clearly not part of our culture and a violation of our team rules. One, I knew that our coach, regardless of the game we were playing, was certainly going to take action on. So I had a decision to make. Do I tell them and I lose 5 of these teammates, or do I let us play? I still don't know if I made the right decision, but I didn't decide to let him know until after that game. We all know what the outcome was. Not very often can you take a shortcut and get to the place you want to go. We lost, and it was because we weren't all together in the same place. And I learned that to be a leader, you have to have people that are following you. And it doesn't mean that it's going to work right all the time, but it's certainly a start. From there, I had the opportunity to play at a top 25 Division I program at Clemson University. They had just started their program. It certainly was a product of Title IX in the sense that women's soccer programs were popping up all over the country. When people ask me if I'm an alum of Minnesota, I always say they didn't have a soccer program when I went through. Otherwise, maybe this would have been my start. It was just a tremendous experience, and again, I had an opportunity to lead our team. I had a coach that said that my quiet leadership could really make an impact there and in life, and he said it enough that I finally believed him. One of the most important lessons he taught me came one summer when I was working camps. I had also taken some summer classes, and I left camp to go to class. I'd get to class, and it had been canceled for some reason, and I quickly returned to my responsibilities back on the field. He came over, I'm sure, wondering why I was skipping class. And when he asked me about it, he said, "Character is what you show when you think no one is looking." And that stuck with me. Camps are a grind. You're tired. You put them to bed put them to bed at night. You're the first one to wake up the kids in the morning. He said it was easy. It would have been easy for you to go back and take a nap. I would have never known that you couldn't have been here. But that stuck with me, that it really matters what happens when nobody's looking. I got my undergraduate degree in psychology and always thought I was going to be a therapist. Was planning to go to grad school, which I did, but never really considered a career in sports. My coaches, and I've talked about Ray, but actually we're a husband and wife team, Tracy and Ray, and even though I had a female head coach, which was certainly unusual, it just never occurred to me that this could be a career path. And they kept pushing me to try it out, and I said, no, I've got a plan, I've got it all figured out. But they said, if you coach, it may help you pay for grad school, and I finally relented. They made a call, so I ended up with an assistant coaching job at the Division II school called the University of Missouri St. Louis back in my hometown. It was really an undeserved opportunity. Tracy had played on the Olympic team, won 4 national championships at the University of North Carolina, and as she prepped me for my interview, I walked in the door, and the question that I was asked was, "You played for Tracy Leon? What size shoe do you wear?" And so my college coaching career began. Certainly wasn't impressed with what I thought I could bring to the table. But the opportunity was there, and I said yes. So I began that coaching career that first year thinking that this was just a step for me as I really continued to work towards that counseling degree. I thought I'd work with adolescents and make an impact. That was always what I wanted to do, focus on that age group and see how I could help them really develop and identify who they were going to be throughout that really tenuous time in their life. At the end of that first year as an assistant coach, the head coach left. And 10 days before preseason, at 22, they offered me the head coaching job at this Division II institution. And my career path had forever been changed. I loved what I was doing. I didn't know how to do it, and it was an exercise in being able to reach out to others to say, I don't know how this works. I have a challenge I haven't quite learned how to manage. And that counseling degree and that master's that I got turned out to be really handy. More than that, I think it's what ultimately made me successful. I learned people. I learned how to listen. I learned how to be there for our student athletes when they needed me. I realized what an impact you could have on them each and every day, and it had nothing to do with wins and losses. It was helping them through a challenging time in their life. That first year when I was out on my own learning how to recruit, and you hear lots of stories about what recruiting is and how that process works, but my first recruit that I landed played on the same high school team as my youngest sister. And she wasn't going to make a decision anytime soon, and I thought I had little chance of actually getting her to come to our institution. But as we did that, I knew that it was going to take a lot of effort to tell her why this was a good place for her to start. But as we went through the process, there was one night where I went to a game, and my sister was actually playing behind this recruit and didn't get on the field. And after the game, she was upset, and as I stood there and comforted her, I didn't think anything about this prospect. The next morning, I got a call from her mother and said, "Hey, we've decided that she's going to attend the University of Missouri St. Louis." And I said, "Can I ask what made the decision for you?" And she said, "If you're going to care for your sister like that, I know you're going to take care of my daughter." Again, another lesson in it's what happens when you think no one is looking. It was a small school, and I had lots of opportunities administratively to learn the business. So I got intrigued with the bigger picture. There were other ways to impact greater than just with our student athletes. I had an opportunity to follow my heart to Indiana, and I worked at a place called Butler University, a small private special school that was really, really unique. I learned a lot from our athletic director there. His name's Barry Collier, who really worked from a place of servant leadership. He was the first one picking up a piece of trash on the floor, opening windows in the gym when it got too hot. He loved that place. And he did it in a way that he was true to himself. His best friend, his dog Jimmy, was always quietly under his desk to a point where you didn't even know he was in there. But he gave me opportunities to grow. He taught me how to make tough decisions. And eventually a call came from the University of Minnesota. I turned it down a couple times, said I wasn't even interested in hearing about it. I didn't know anyone at the University of Minnesota, and although I knew it was a great institution, a great research institution, and they'd had good success, I thought, hey, I've got everything figured out right here. But eventually, ambition got the best of me. I knew that they had a good athletic program, but I believed it could be better, and I wanted to be a part of that. So as I got to Minnesota, I took that challenge. And it takes a couple years, as you know, to get comfortable in a new role. And I felt good about what I was doing. I built relationships with the staff, relationships with the community, really had started to embark on fundraising, and that was going well. And then I got a call last summer, and it was time to dance. I had to say yes, and this time I had to do it on a public stage. We've had a challenging last 6 to 9 months, But through that process, the one thing that's been extremely important is to remember who I am and what the values I hold and what the values of that institution are. Each and every day, I've looked at what is the right thing to do here. Regardless of what it's going to mean for everybody else, can I live with it down the road? And that's really been a key piece of how we've managed through this last 6 months. We have a great team of people, and as you try and define who you are, you don't want it to be about the mistakes that an institution made or an individual made. We want to tell our great story and all of the great things that happen each and every day. And we want to model that for our student athletes. Yes, she'll make bad decisions. Yes, tough times are going to come, but we're going to stand up and we're going to be better and stronger for it in the long run. So throughout my journey, I've tried to learn from each and every experience, and I still know I have a long way to go. I said I like to be in the outdoors, and if, for anybody that hikes, you know you have these things called Karens that along a path will show you where to go. It's a rock pile that this tells you where the next step in the path is. Well, I challenge everyone to say yes to taking that uphill hike. You want to keep going and look for those Karens. They'll keep you where you want to go. Sometimes they're just around the corner, but you have to trust that they're going to be there. And if you keep on following that, you'll finally hit the summit. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Awesome. So in a few minutes, I'll do an interview with Beth. We could probe a little bit more about the athletics at the University of Minnesota. But the thing that I was the most impressed with was the presence of this coach in your life who saw something in you that you didn't see. I think everyone in this room has that person. So would you think back to who was that person that saw something in you that you didn't even see in yourself that helped you get to where you are today? Ready, set, go. We had some great conversations at our table about the people in our lives who saw the potential in us, and I hope you did too. I'm really excited for this interview. We have many people who live their lives in very quiet ways that come and be the speaker at the Good Leadership Breakfast, and I think you and I've talked about this. You kind of prefer that way, but you were thrust into the spotlight. And you have a job today that typically has been occupied by these bold, outgoing, audacious males.
I hadn't noticed that.
So how are you creating your space at the table?
It's a really great question. And I've been really lucky throughout my career that I've been surrounded by a lot of male champions, which is just as important as having our women that are going to really empower us to be strong. But I really think it's about leading with your knowledge and your understanding, and not trying to be someone you're not. I can't tell you how many times I've had people say it, and they really have no embarrassment about just walking up to you and saying, "Well, you can't do this. You didn't play football." And I said, I didn't know they were going to ask me to call plays next weekend.
Yeah, that's right.
But you have to frame out, I think, for them what you can do, and that there's another way to do it. There are two women that are athletic directors at this level across the country. So only two at in the Power 5 schools. And so I think you look around and you see what they are capable of doing. But gender shouldn't define the way that you go about your business. Shouldn't define who you are or how well or how successful you can be at it. So I think it's about building those relationships and building trust and not being afraid to correct people if they want to put you in a box that says you can't do this because of who you are.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. I asked you earlier about where's the fun in this. So we know it's a complicated job right now, but it's also fun, and you just lit up. Would you tell us where's the fun in this for you right now?
Oh, hands down, it's being with people. I mean, everything you do is about relationships, and in our case, it's seeing our student athletes experience success. So a conference championship I get to watch tonight as men's hockey competes for a Big Ten title, and hopefully after the women's ice hockey team beats Wisconsin, I'll be heading out east to watch a potential another national championship team. But it's about what they accomplish each and every day. So you see a headline in the paper, and those are important, and we've got to be better at what we do. But by noon every day, somebody's aced an exam, they've gotten an internship. Maybe they did set a record on the floor. But those are the things that get you up in the morning, is knowing that you're a part of helping them become our future leaders. They're going to be leading our businesses and sitting here and doing things like this in our community, and that's really special.
Good. Well, what advice are you giving to those students? I'm assuming that you have that part of a role because of how that role affected you. So what advice are you giving to the student athletes at the University of Minnesota?
Yeah, there's a lot of things and anecdotes we like to tell them, but as I was talking earlier, a lot of it's about saying yes to opportunity. Set your goals, but don't get so narrowly focused that you can't see the paths that are in front of you. If something scares you because you think you might fail, that's probably the best time to say, yes, let me go after that. Let me give it a try. And you want to empower them to dream as big as they can and not be discouraged if they fail.
Good. I guess I would expect you to say that, yes. So if you don't become the AD at the University of Minnesota, what can we expect from you next?
I think it's always been important, and again, as I thought I was going to be a counselor or I found this passion for sports, but I want to be in a place where I know I can impact people. I want to help them become what they can, and I think that niche for me is in college sports where I can share that passion, and I hope that's what I'll be able to do in the future, is continue to do that. And the seat you're sitting in doesn't change that ability. So whatever role you play, you still can have that effect on people.
Last question, but there's a little bit of a preamble. Like you, I travel a lot, and I tell people I'm from Minneapolis and from Minnesota, and there's an interesting response people have. People are passionate about their locales and their state and their universities for lots of reasons. We see that on TV all the time. But there's this spirit in Minnesota. And to hear you talk about where your family grew up and seeing the name on the buildings, that there's this can-do attitude where I really believe we can make a difference in Minnesota, and I think that's a really precious thing. And so with that context, it's also hurts a lot if you're a fan to see your programs not doing well. We want to win. We want to win.
I want to win too.
We want to win, partly because it feels good. But what I've been noticing about this as an observer, we want to feel good as much or more as we want to win. And there have been certain parts of this that have not felt good. Can you share some things behind the scenes that are going to help everybody here feel good about where the University of Minnesota athletics are headed? Because I think that's really important.
Yeah, and Paul, I love that question, because you want to tell all those stories that happen behind the scenes, and certainly a handful that come to mind. I had the opportunity, and I'll call it that, to testify at the Senate Higher Education hearing yesterday. Always good to get a look at inside of the government, but while I was there, one of our student government representatives, so one of our non-athletes, says to me, I've been sitting in a class next to Amanda Kessel. So she's an Olympian and on our women's ice hockey team all semester long, and didn't realize it was her. And he was just in awe of all this young woman has accomplished and overcome. She's had some concussion issues. And to see an impact that one of our female student athletes is having on one of our male leaders on campus outside of our department was pretty incredible. One of my favorite stories to tell that's really been unfolding over the past couple of years is we have a football student athlete who will graduate this year. His name's Joe Bjorklund. He was a walk-on and earned himself a starting spot even at the end of this year. Dual major, Carlson grad, and he's going to focus on construction management. He did his internship this past year, has been doing his internship while playing football, while going to class with Mortensen Construction. Mortensen just happens to be the construction group that is building our Athletes Village right behind our building. Joe's been hired by Mortensen, is going to have a chance to build the future of Gopher athletics that he's been a part of. And we have dozens of those stories, 200 student athletes that graduate each year. We have an overall department GPA of a 3.2, which is really, really incredible. And our graduation success rate is the highest of any public institution in the country. So those are the stories that make us proud.
Thanks, it feels good. Yeah, it does. It does.